Greetings, fellow Earthlings. I'm looking at the world again, as always. I'm still wondering what could have created the scars. Well, I'm going back to the time before I reached the conclusion as to what could have created the scars. I was just talking about how I think there's a sprite over here. And I was showing you guys Michael Steinbacher's work where he saw this curl in here, come back over here, and you can actually go over to, see, this is a figure 8 pattern in my opinion. This is on Venus. This is not the planet I meant to take you to Mars over here, where he sees this is what he was saying he was seeing in terms of what he was looking at over. Let me zoom out. In this feature where it curls out this way and it comes back over this way. These shoot in, these come over. Now, Steinbacher was referring back to Immanuel Velikovsky right here. And this was a man I was very familiar with for many years, even though I didn't really read everything he had to offer. I only read his one book, Worlds in Collision, but it resonated very profoundly with me when I read it. So I went to revisit some of his work because honestly, when I looked at the world, I didn't really see Venus doing this in a way that can affect all this and all this. And then you got to think too, like if we have a lot, he said there weren't a lot of survivors in some of these, but if you have similar stories, I don't know, like this looks way more intense than what happened over here, in my opinion. And if you don't have that many survivors, well, I mean, there were people living throughout this region. The point I was trying to make is I was just trying to make sense of it all. And in that process, I had a few other thoughts running through my head. Pangea Earth, can this be tidally locked? I was explaining that a bit a few videos ago. And looking at this feature, and at some point in time I became aware, somebody alerted me to specifically this. In the Velikovsky archives, the Earth without the Moon. I never thought about this before, but apparently there was a time on this planet without the Moon, and we have recollections of it. Which is a little scary to think, but he goes back and he tries to explain some of the theories they have. He says these are the three theories, currently the three theories of the origins of the Moon, and this is written back in, I don't know what time exactly this was written, but this is probably the 1950s era. And it says the Moon was originated at the same time as the Earth, being formed substantially from the same material, aggregating and solidifying. The Moon was formed, number 2, the Moon was formed not in the vicinity of Earth, but in a different part of the solar system and was later captured by Earth. Number 3, the Moon was originally a portion of the terrestrial crust and was torn out, leaving behind the bed of the Pacific. Now, these are the three theories that were out there at that time. Now, if you could imagine this would be torn out to create the Moon, well, that really doesn't explain this feature to me. And I think that's a lot larger than our Moon. You would have to take this entire landmass and send that out to them. It doesn't make sense to me. And we can look at today, do we even have the origins of the Moon? The scientists really don't know this one. And they go back and talk about proto-Earth is the theory, And this is basically what they had in Velikovsky's time. Nothing's really changed from this theory where the moon was originally a portion of the terrestrial crust and torn out, leaving behind. I mean, they might consider something different, but when you see the images from the origins of the moon, like this is again what they put in our minds, this kinetic impact, giant impact hypothesis. A large Mars-sized object strikes the Earth. This disrupts the Earth and throws a large amount of material from the Earth. This would then condense to form the moon. Holy cow! Does anyone see that happening? Can anyone actually explain the physics behind that happening? Does that even explain our moon? So if you throw one thing at the Earth, you got a giant sphere, you throw that at the Earth, and somehow you're supposed to rip off whatever, and that turns out to be the moon. That to me sounds pretty ridiculous. Like they'll take you step by step. You throw this at this happens, and then boom. Like what? Okay, so this gets me frustrated just even talking about this, and this is where I see your frustration, Emmanuel Velikovsky, because these people don't know, and that's why he's smiling here, because he knows they don't know. I like this quote. Don't be afraid to face the facts, and never lose your ability to ask the questions why and how. I'm going to start off by saying one of the biggest facts I'm facing right here, and I was afraid of it. Nobody had the answers for this. Nobody had the answers. I was trying to explain this. But in the process of asking those questions, I came back here and I was familiar with this. I became familiar with this. Just the concept of knowing that at one point in time, our planet might not have had a moon, because I hadn't even considered about that in reference to these scars. But now that you think about it, when you go back to this, I can kind of consider their theory, but instead of throwing another object to rip portions off to create the moon, why don't we just throw the moon at the Earth and see if we can do this? You understand what I'm saying? Let's see this out. Check this out. Or, sorry, not the circumference, diameter. Before I even look, even though I already know, I'm going to come over here. Do it on this map because we can measure. So I'm going to give you, this is the circle I'm seeing. This is the size of the circle I'm seeing. We take this out and we continue it, and this is about this big. Now, take the scale, boom, boom, about that big. 2,000 miles across maybe is what we're looking at, about. If I go from the outer crust, or gives you an idea of the scale. What is that diameter of the moon? 2,159 miles. To put that in perspective, that would be slightly bigger, but not really. Not really. Much larger than an area of about that size. So, if you're going to take an object of that size and throw it at the Earth, if we started out like this, without a moon, and we're traveling around our orbit, the land side's always facing away, so that's going to be the most likely side of an impact, unless the moon were to come in like this from another angle. And this is where I decided to take this a step further, kind of, and I had to actually consider this from a rational perspective. If we start off with this, we throw the moon at the Earth, somehow can we end up with these visible scars? And that's where I think when you apply that sort of a number to this equation, you're in the realms of plausibility, in my opinion. I haven't even added numbers to see, but I would say if you're throwing a moon, ignore the little tiny asteroid, because they say that's only as big as a mountain. A mountain is what? That little speck down there. Now compare that to the moon. That's a whole mountain range. That's a whole mountain range. This is a whole mountain range. But that's the moon right there, in my opinion. And that's where, so revisiting Velikovsky, I don't think it's necessarily Venus that we have to consider, because that's what he was most known for. But I don't think as many people knew about this. This archive is a treasure trove. And when I found this, it was like, yeah, because you see these are the early ages. This is way before. And then you scroll down and you see this is what the Thunderbolts project are talking about down here. So this stuff happened way later. Velikovsky was saying there was a bunch of catastrophes. It started up here. This is pre-flood times. So this is a whole world that opened up to me that I was not aware of. And when you apply that to things like this, or concepts like a tidally locked Earth in this configuration around a different celestial body, and all of a sudden you look back here and it's like, whoa, okay, now I think we're onto something. Now it's not just, now it's something to pursue, I think, in my opinion. And so I did. All right, good luck everyone. I'll make more as the day goes.